Now, all of this is where, as we look at this picture here of the United States, it gets pretty heavy. We have a dark image of our nation, and we have to start getting to the root of literally what has happened. Let me play this piece here. This is by Yuri Brezhnev. He was a former KGB defector that came over and was describing to us some of the things that they were working on in seeding this invasion in the minds of the American society. What is referred to more importantly is how we create mind viruses and get them planted in the people's mind and then amplified.
Mean by
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization.
This man spoke truth long ago, 1984, in fact, and nobody listened, at least not enough. And he lays out the entire plan. You can find his stuff still on YouTube. It's pretty amazing. And it does lay out the entire plan of what was done to subjugate Americans through what they refer to as mind viruses. Mind viruses is actually a real study. It's where the word memetics comes from, or what we would commonly know as memes. Memes are the process now used to visually transmit information in, and memes have been used in an attempt to try to dislodge some of this programming by creating visual images that bypass the frontal cortex and get into the subconscious, where the subconscious then will work with the meme to dissect it and shape it and then unsettle some of the deep programming that's settled in. As I've talked about here many times, the conscious mind works at roughly about 1,000 processes per second. The subconscious mind works somewhere at the level of about 100,000 processes per second. This conscious mind is going to be looking at things and processing quickly and then coming to a decision. The subconscious mind will take that decision in a framework of greater truth, so that as we move forward, then we can start to keep the ship righted, if you will, keep the keel deep in the water. We understand pretty clearly that over the past few years with the COVID con, there has been a massive cognitive snap. And so what has happened here is that people were overloaded in their conscious mind and put into such a state of hyper fear that the body itself was starting to fall apart. The body has a reaction to that using the mind, that it will shift or break from the reality in which you know into an alternate reality, a subaltern, and accept an alternate reality in order to keep the fear minimized and keep the body system stable. This was a major effect of COVID con. and it caused a cognitive break across a large section of society. So it should come as no surprise that in parallel to COVIDCon, we see the increase in programming and insistence on a gender shift, a gender plurality culture. Because it's there that as people have found a snap and the subconscious is trying to anchor itself into another reality, there is then this new challenge that comes in right away, which comes from queer theory in schools, which ties in right along with this. The children that have gone through the same process now are now being told that their gender is in plural. Their gender is no longer that of what they were told. Combine that with a cultural message, which includes that of churches, which is you are unworthy. That takes on two forms. There is the church message, which states you are unworthy. And there is the cultural message, which is more powerful, which states that you are not only unworthy, but you are the parasitic problem of the earth. With all of this comes the dependence, the weight of guilt and doubt in who we are. With that is equally shame. Shame rests on people for being human, and it becomes an agent by which to use to now conquer the free will. Shame becomes a heavy burden, especially with the ideology and the religion of environmentalism, where people are now should be shameful for even being human and having any sort of carbon footprint. Remember, they want us down to carbon footprint 0 as a human being. The only way you can do that is to be killed or die. That's it. So this whole process of breaking down the cognitive structure of our minds to where people then become embedded with shame, they begin to doubt who they are, and in doubting, they also are able to be susceptible to the words of who is greater, and they start to believe that God is lesser than Satan. Shame takes us away from God as we're able to point to the fact that you've been created imperfectly, which is the strong message of the queer movement. And in so doing, that's reinforced by the church message of you are born into sin. This is a difficult one. It's a difficult one for people to accept because they will go to the place of saying, well, but we are born in sin. Well, that's fine, except Satan's using this very effectively now, because as you are born imperfect, and that ties in with being born into sin, the greater message is your God is imperfect and your God is unjust. Therefore, allow me to show you a better way. This is the greater message of this queer theory monster. And in convincing people that they are lesser, that they should be shamed, and they are shamed into believing that they are imperfect, they're willing to accept something greater. And even greater to this is then the subject of fear, because fear then works within them, where fear becomes a place where they are seated. It's seated within them that there is nothing here to save them other than themselves and the choices which they make. And that's where the handlers step in beautifully, the handlers being the teachers and those around them that are inoculating them with this devilish thinking. And children then are making choices to choose to have another gender. It's their process as well to right the subconsciousness of their minds so that the body system stabilizes. They release themselves, at least in the short term, from doubt, shame, and fear to accept a new process, a new way, by identifying as something other than what you were born as. The perfect creation which God allows is then hijacked, and the child is told that all that imperfection that they're told to believe is now made perfect within the surgery of a transgender flip. This is a very sophisticated, very well thought out, and very well planned attack on our society and our children. All it takes is a very simple thing. And this is where they have used Scripture as a weapon against people, and the church's inability to separate that message from what is being taught is causing children to literally be slayed by this. And the weakness of the pulpit only compounds it. We are in a very, very critical point here of trying to grasp hold of a culture, and it's very important to understand that they are teaching children to not trust in God or believe in God, because God somehow has created an imperfect being. This is the whole foundation, and this is where Satan's hand is extended to say, follow me. And with this, they're led into a society which is insanely devilish. It's a living hell. Part of this new